Keep your fingers inside the boat, recruits. I don't care if the lily pad looked at you funny. These canals do not appreciate careless appendages. And turn the flashlight off. You're illuminating the fog, and all that does is show whatever is lurking in the brush exactly where to aim its glare. If we get ambushed by an aggressive local heron because you wanted to look at the swamp flower, I am leaving you here with the bullfrogs. Welcome to a very displaced broadcast of the Society of Shadows and Snacks. I'm your keeper. Normally, we audit our ledgers from the comfort of a dry Texas hearth, but tonight we are floating through the ancient labyrinthine waters of Xochimilco, Mexico. On our way to a rented Chinampa bungalow, we are opening Case File 7, the Island of Dolls. And frankly, the administrative dread out here is thick enough to cut with a pastry knife. Look around us in the gloom, recruit. Those aren't strange fruits hanging from the willow trees. Those are thousands of decaying, sun-bleached, mud-encrusted plastic dolls. Some are missing limbs. Some are just hollow heads impaled on broken branches. Their empty sockets tracking our little boat as the current pulls us along. It's like a clearance aisle at a thrift store, if the thrift store was curated by a demonic toddler. Look, I am completely out of my element. I tolerate a lot of things. I tolerate ectoplasm on the baseboards back home. And I tolerate your endless paperwork errors. But thousands of rotting toy faces critiquing my navigation while I'm trying to row a boat? Absolutely not. It is a logistical horror story. Ah, look, there's the dock. Up we go. Try not to slip in the mud, recruit. Your insurance doesn't cover swamp-related fractures. Sit at this rustic table right now, recruit. You are shaking like a leaf in a Texas thunderstorm, and your skin is cold and clammy from that canal air. I am not having your spirit detach from your body on my watch. I simply don't have the budget to hire a replacement this late in the fiscal year. Before we open a single page of history or check our communication lines, we must secure the interior perimeter. To keep your blood pumping and ensure your consciousness stays firmly locked inside your bones, I've prepared our defensive countermeasure, the Spiced Borderline Brownie. The base is an aggressive, thick, dark cocoa. The heavy density is a grounding agent to keep your soul way down. But I have laced the batter with Mexican cinnamon and a sharp, defensive kick of cayenne pepper. Now, the comfort and protection ritual is mandatory. Do not just stuff it in your face like an uncultured gremlin. Take the brownie in both hands and snap it cleanly in half, directly over the lantern light. Look at the steam rising from the center. That heat is your shield. Before you chew, I want you to press a small piece of the warm crumb directly on the center of your forehead, the third eye locus. Yes, you will look slightly ridiculous with a chocolate smudge on your face, but dignity is a luxury we cannot afford in a haunted bungalow. Let the warmth anchor your sensory grid and burn away the damp chill of the canal. Now, eat. Focus entirely on the sudden, sharp bloom of the chili heat on your tongue. Ghosts absolutely hate a warm host, recruit. The cayenne triggers an immediate physical sweat response and mimics a minor fever. A warm body acts as a natural disinfectant against ambient energy, signaling to the dark that the vessel is already completely occupied by a living, breathing soul. There now, much better. The color is coming back to your cheeks. Cibum est tutela. Now that your perimeter is stable, let's look into why we are surrounded by a plastic infantry tonight. Let's talk about the science of the conduit, recruit. Why dolls? Why not a shoe? Or a very nice toaster? Well, an entity inside a toaster would just make your bagels terrible. But synthetic polymers, rubber, and porcelain have an incredibly low spiritual resistance. Human beings naturally project souls faces an intense emotional comfort onto dolls. It's basic psychology. Because we look at them and expect to see a person, entities find it terrifyingly easy to slip inside them like a hand into a glove. They aren't toys anymore. They are empty vessels that feed on residual grief. And it isn't just an isolated phenomenon here in Mexico. This is a global administrative issue. Think of Annabelle, that infamous Raggedy Ann doll from the 1970s. The common misconception is that the doll itself was haunted. Incorrect! It was a demonic entity manipulating the fabric of the toy, using its innocent appearance to gain proximity to human targets. Imagine getting terrorized by a giant piece of yarn. Pfft, how embarrassing. Or look at Robert the doll in Key West, Florida. A turn-of-the-century effigy infused with so much spiteful intent and human attachment that it still requires visitors to politely ask his permission before taking a photograph, lest their electronics short out. He's incredibly petty like that. And then, of course, there is the okiku in Japan, a traditional doll whose hair inexplicably grows over time, requiring regular trims. Look, when spiritual energy physically alters synthetic or organic material like nylon hair, you aren't dealing with a simple memory anymore. You are dealing with a fully operational outpost for the unseen. Which brings us to our society links. Even out here in the middle of the Xochimilco wetlands, our global frequency lines are open. The Secure Vault has received 2 distinct audio logs regarding this exact conduit phenomenon, and they are, well, they're downright chilling. Let's tune our receivers to our first field recording from a member in Nebraska.
Keeper, I should have listened to the protocols. Last month, I bought a vintage, life-size composition doll from an abandoned theater. It was meant to be an historical prop for my study, but within 3 days, the atmosphere of my house began to curdle. The air itself tasted metallic. By week 2, I realized the doll wasn't just sitting there. It was actively drawing the ambient energy from the room. I'd walk in and find it completely freezing to the touch, while the rest of the house was stifling. Then the mimicry started. I live alone, Keeper, but I started hearing my own voice, whispering from the corner of the study, repeating phrases I said earlier that day. That's when I realized the entity inside the doll was using the plastic body to rehearse being human. Last night, it completely took over the condo. I woke up at 3 a.m. because the air in my bedroom felt like lead. I turned my head and the doll was standing right beside my bed. It wasn't walking, it was vibrating, its limbs jerking unnaturally, and its porcelain mouth was snapping open and shut, producing my mother's voice, telling me to turn off the lights. I panicked, but I remembered the society's basic anchor protocols. I didn't run, I reached for my lighter. I struck a flame and held it directly between myself and the doll. I forced myself to recite the recruiter's oath out loud, focusing entirely on the warmth of the fire. The moment my voice stayed steady, the entity lost its grip. The doll collapsed on the floor like a sack of bricks. Since then, I've kept it locked in a steel trunk wrapped in heavy toe chains. But still, I can hear it thumping against the metal from inside.
A textbook containment failure, Nebraska, but full marks for maintaining your composure under extreme administrative duress. The entity tried to use a familiar voice to bypass your mental security gate, but fire is a universal boundary, and honey, practicing being human? Absolutely not. We have enough humans as it is, and most of them are already a handful. Do not open that trunk again, melt it down, bury it under a concrete slab, and perform a full sage and iron purge on that steady. Let's patch through our second Society Link audio log from the vault, just to see how deep this route goes.
Keeper, I need to know if I'm losing my mind. My grandmother passed away last year, and she left me a collection of vintage celluloid dolls from Germany. I had put them on the shelves in my daughter's nursery. My daughter started waking up at exactly 3:14 a.m. every night. She was pointing at the ceiling and crying about the upside-down people. Last night, I fell asleep in the rocking chair beside her crib. I woke up to a complete dead silence. Even the baby monitor static had cut out. I looked up at the high shelf. The dolls weren't on the shelf anymore. They were hanging from the ceiling joists by their synthetic hair, dangling upside down, their little plastic arms completely extended towards my daughter's crib. When I turned on the light, they were back on the shelf, but their glass eyes were still slowly rolling back down into place. I threw them in the outdoor incinerator this morning, but the smoke smelled like caramelized sugar and old damp earth.
Disgusting. Celluloid is practically an open invitation for low-level entities looking to mimic human form. Honestly, who leaves vintage dolls in a nursery anyway? You might as well just set up a neon sign that says, "Free lodging for wayward spirits." To the mother who burned them, you did the right thing. But you need to scrub that nursery ceiling with rosemary oil immediately. Entities hate a clean perimeter. Now, let's return to the master ledger of the specific island, because the history of Don Julián Santana Barrera ties all of these conduit anomalies together. In the 1950s, Don Julián wasn't a hermit. He was an ordinary man with a family. But a sudden, violent, spiritual shift drove him to abandon society completely and retreat to this isolated chinampa. Shortly after his arrival, the tragedy occurred. He found the body of a young girl drowned in the canal, her form tangled helplessly in the water lilies. He couldn't revive her, recruit. And that kind of failure, it rots the spirit. It turns the mind into a very, very messy kitchen. Days later, a single plastic doll floated down the exact same current, washing up at his feet. In his grief-stricken state, Don Julián believed the doll was a physical vessel holding the girl's restless, angry spirit, or perhaps a peace offering required to keep her ghost from pulling him under. He hung that first doll in a willow tree as a protective ward, but a perimeter built on grief is highly unstable. Soon he claimed that the girl's voice was whispering to him through the reeds, demanding more company. For 50 years, he traded his homegrown vegetables to locals and combed through the trash docks of Mexico City, collecting thousands of discarded, broken, and deformed toys. Preposterous! The local authorities dismissed him as a madman. But think of the logistics. He didn't wash them, recruit. He hung them blind, severed, and covered in mud. He inadvertently constructed a massive organic satellite dish of raw emotional trauma. He built a beacon that started pulling in every stray, malevolent entity floating down the Xochimilco frequency. If you're gonna build a spiritual defense system, at least use something aesthetic, like a nice gargoyle. And the final audit report is the most terrifying part. In 2001, Don Julián's nephew came to check on him. He found the old man dead, floating face down in the dark water, in the exact same spot where Don Julián claimed to have found the drowned girl 50 years prior. The sentinel was compromised, the watchman fell, but thousands of conduits he left behind, they are still hanging out there in the dark, listening, waiting, probably judging my outfit as we speak. If you don't mind, I'm gonna keep this lantern burning at maximum capacity all night. I don't like the way the shadows from the willow trees are pressing against the glass panes of this bungalow. For daily perimeter updates, safe summer market recipes, and behind-the-scenes look into our vault ledgers, make sure your digital receivers are tuned to our Instagram frequency at Society of Shadows and Snacks. But adjust your dials carefully for next week, recruit, because our administrative calendar is about to get incredibly cold and incredibly hostile. We are auditing the Men in Black. Forget the comical figures from the cinema with their sleek sunglasses and witty banter. We are tracking the silent, towering, completely hairless anomalies who show up on your doorstep in pristine, dustless black suits 48 hours after you've seen something in the sky you weren't supposed to. They don't blink, recruit. Their skin looks like cheap wax. Their teeth are too uniform, and they speak in a flat, mechanical monotone that can induce a nosebleed from 5 feet away. They don't have a sense of humor. They don't have a pulse. They don't even have a concept of a Tuesday. And if they ask to step inside your house to inspect your electronics, your perimeter is already dead. Alright, put those audio cables away. Look at you, you're practically frozen from that horror story. Here, put these extra hand-knit wool socks on right now. I don't care if we are in a humid tropical canal. You will wear the wool socks to bed, or so help me, I will hex your digestive tract. Check the deadbolt on the screen door. Pull the heavy curtains completely shut, and for heaven's sake, if you hear something tapping a tiny plastic hand against the floorboards, do not look under the bed. Just tell it to go away. We aren't taking any visitors until sunrise. Go on. Shoo! Scram to your cup. Love you. Mean it. Goodbye for now.